This is the M2 Max, and I want to see how it performs with Blender, a program I quite like. So first, I'm going to be doing a rendering test so you could see how fast it renders a couple scenes compared to a 2020 iMac and an M1 Max. I'm also going to try doing a fluid simulation and see how that performs, as the last time I did this, it was with my 13-inch M1 Mac, which was pretty slow at fluid simulations. Anyways, let's download Blender. For those of you who are doing this for the first time, make sure to download the Apple Silicon version and go to Edit Preferences and enable Metal, which dramatically speeds up the renders. Just as a comparison, when I tested this a week ago with the M1 Max, it went from 19-minute render down to 10 minutes, with simply enabling this feature. At least with that demo file. Anyways, I'm going to be testing the rendering capabilities, first with a large scene, this case the 3.3 demo file, then a smaller render, more to the scale of what I typically do. In this case, it will be a VR scene that I made a week or two ago. Okay, so now to the rendering. You can see the M1 Max took 9 minutes 57.9 seconds, the iMac took 24 minutes and 25.65 seconds, which honestly is quite mind-blowing to me since this is only 2.5 years old. And for the M2 Max, it took a full 6 minutes and 52.55 seconds. Which is ironically nearly exactly 30% faster like Apple said when they announced the MacBook. Definitely a nice speed bump in this case. And here's a chart for those of you like me who like the visuals. Okay, now it's definitely worth mentioning how Blender actually runs while you're navigating the scene, and while it's not perfect, I am still impressed by it because this is such an intense scene. But now let's see with my smaller VR scene how much faster, if any, it really is. For the M1 Max, it took 38.6 seconds, the iMac took 54.23 seconds, and the M2 Max took 31.74 seconds. Definitely still improvements, more so when you see the graph of it though. This is very useful because for rendering animations, it will be a lot smoother, even with these smaller scenes. Anyways, let's try doing a fluid simulation. While I had the M1 Max, I actually did test it, and you could see it still worked well. But with the M2 Max, I didn't drop any frames, and was actually able to leave it on replay to get decent results, at least with a semi-low resolution. I then decided to create a more complicated fluid simulation that involved a collision object and a ball with rigid body physics on it, and also had collision on it, which resulted in this. This was pretty great, as doing something on my old 13-inch M1 laptop would have taken nearly all day due to waiting for it to finish baking. It still took a while with the M2 Max, since I cranked up the resolution to 300, but it actually worked, and it worked really well. Overall, this laptop is amazing, and will definitely work with Blender, and actually quite well. For those of you who are wondering what other applications I've been using with it, mainly I've been using Chrome, Visual Studio Code, DaVinci Resolve, Photoshop, and a little bit of Premiere. All of these applications have worked great, and I wouldn't expect any problems as this is the second generation of Apple Silicon. Anyways, hopefully I'll have this for at least 5 years, assuming something like the screen doesn't break, as it did with my 13-inch M1. Still not really sure how that happened, by the way. Oh, and for those of you who did see my video about the M1 Max nearly a month ago, I still think it's a great machine and worth getting if you would rather have the discount, but I ended up deciding to trade mine in for the M2 Max since I could still do that. I literally packaged it up and put it out the door and it went away.
So what I will be talking about in this video is how the programs have been working for me, because I've been using this for about a week now when you're seeing this. Right now what you're seeing though is when I first got it and was opening the box. So because I've been using it for a little week, I've had a little bit of time to play with the programs that I was planning on using with it, which mainly includes Blender, but I also have used a little bit of Photoshop and a little bit of Premiere Pro on it. So I will talk about how they've been working for me on this new computer. Let's get into it. So to start, the programs I've been using are Photoshop, Premiere Pro, VS Studio Code, Unreal, Chrome, and of course, Blender. So if you're here just to see what programs have been working for me, then here are my current thought on these programs. So Adobe Photoshop, check. Adobe Premiere Pro, check. VS Studio Code, check. Unreal, iffy. The reason I say that is because there have been some weird lighting glitches. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Chrome, surprisingly, kinda. The reason I say that is because it has been crashing a little bit, mainly because of the new M1 chip. That should be updated soon though. Blender, check if you're using 2.91 or greater. So here I am in Blender, and as you can see, there is a car. This car I actually made while I've had this computer. The reason I made this car was to test out this computer and see how it worked while actually making something. So I do have a time lapse of this coming out soon, but at the moment this is what I have. And as far as actually making anything in Blender, I haven't actually ran into any issues. And as you can see, I just switched to cycles and it has been working. That was fixed already because you may have already heard that if you use 2.9, then there is an issue where Blender will literally just crash. I did actually try this and it did just crash, along with the fact that when you would duplicate an object, it would stick to the other object, which was a pain, but that got fixed too. So as for doing Blender on this computer, it's been working great, and speed-wise, definitely an improvement from my other computer. So that basically does it for talking about the programs I wanted to show you, but now I just want to do a speed test comparing the 3 computers that we have in our house. So let's do this test. It is a Blender test, and before I actually speed this up, I will mention that the one on the left is the new MacBook Pro, and the one in the middle is a basic model of an iMac. I will show you the tech specs on screen. And the one on the right is a MacBook Air, which I will also show you the tech specs on screen right now. So now that you know what these are, let's speed this up and I'll show you the times of when they finish. So let's go. Well, there we have it. There are the computers finishing, and as I expected, it did go in order from the MacBook Air was last, and then the MacBook Pro, and then the iMac. But what I was surprised by was how much faster that MacBook Pro is compared to the MacBook Air, and then even how it compares to an iMac, because that iMac is a 2020 model. So that was very impressive. So here are the times pulling up on screen. But that pretty much does it for me today. I hope you found this interesting, but bye!
Hey Buzz, that's a pretty nifty belt you have there. I need a belt like that to hold up my pants, so you better give it to me now.
We're in enemy territory. Scan the area for hostiles.
Wait a second. What are you doing? Wait, no!